No one could have predicted that the stats on this list would have been put up last year, so this video you get to know the most shocking, in most cases impressive stats that might change your perspective on the players mentioned tonight. In no order, these are the 10 most insane NBA stats of 2019. First, the shoutout goes to Hattie, who says D'Lo and Curry are the most elite backcourt, and goes on to say that D'Angelo Russell will gain wisdom from who he calls the two greatest shooters ever in the Splash Brothers. For that take, Hattie moves up on the speaks board. Questions coming up for next vid shoutout. Now to the video. Number 1 is Brook Lopez's total shots contested. A career-high 2.2 blocks per night put Milwaukee's center as the 4th best shot blocker in basketball, but when you dive into the advanced stats, there's a number that represents Brook's 2019 defensive turnaround in much bigger fashion. That number's 1,561, the total amount of shots he contested, 279 more than any other player. Brook's known as a stretch big. This stat should validate him as not only an elite defender at his position, but a consistent powerhouse of a hustle player. The amount of altered shots from Lopez is a big explanation for the Bucks ranking first in defense last year, and his now statistically proven effort sets a valuable example for his teammates. Number 2, Westbrook's turnovers. Russ has set some seemingly unfortunate feats with his unorthodox ball-dominant and explosive ways at point guard. Firstly, Westbrook had a turnover in every game last year for OKC, which extended his overall turnover streak to 242 games. That specifically is without a doubt the least shocking stat on this list. But before you hear Westbrook's actual shocking stat, to be clear, I'm not saying turnovers are the worst thing. You can't ask Russ to rein in his style of play just so his turnover numbers drop. Westbrook got to being the elite player he is today by playing the way he does. Asking Russ to change his style of play is like asking Stephen A. Smith to stop exaggerating and yelling on TV.
My first move as the executive was to sign Lamar Odom, who was on crack.
It wouldn't be the same. Westbrook's TOs are a small price to pay for the value he provides when he has his game going. Having said that, Westbrook has committed at least one turnover in 421 of his last 422 games. One game of not turning the ball over in 6 years, which is remarkable. Stat number 3, charges drawn from Ersan Ilyasova. One of the riskiest plays in basketball is the act of laying your body on the line to accept a charge. The momentum of slashers in by far the fastest basketball league in the world can cause a big-time impact. Ersan Ilyasova led the league in total charges drawn last season by almost 20. Then he had another 18 in the playoffs. And in some cases, Ilyasova displays complete fearlessness, but in a lot of cases, he gets the charge call when he exaggerates the contact. The man's 235 pounds, he has to sell the impact to get knocked down, but Ilyasova's flopping doesn't take away from the value his positioning provided for that aforementioned number 1 ranked 2019 Milwaukee defense. Regardless of it driving his opponents insane, the possessions Ersan's saving by allowing the momentum of the slasher to take him to the floor mean just as much as any pointer stat recorded. Number 4 is Ben Simmons' offensive rebounding percentage, plus 2.5% ahead of any other guard in the advanced stat. Offensive rebounding percentage is the Philly Sixers point guard Ben Simmons. The reason that this lead in percentage is significant is because from the number 2 ranked DeLon Wright to the number 12 ranked Malcolm Brogdon, the difference is 0.6 percentage points. Ben's massive 2.5% lead, doubling the majority of guards, proves that he's a new breed of point guard and a complete mismatch in any era of the NBA. Whether it's Ben's athletic tip-ins from out of nowhere to his wingspan and brute strength that allow him to have his way in the paint, holding down and boxing out Simmons is a physically draining challenge for any guard or forward matched up with him. Number 5, Harden's deflections and steals. Memed for his defense in the past, after these next regular and advanced stats, your opinion of the beard may change. The thumbnail for this video is partly clickbait, as Harden's the steals leader among guards and right behind Paul George in steals overall. However, leading an elite pack of defensive guards in steals is impressive in itself. But to solidify Harden's successful effort to be better defensively, we have to turn to the hustle stats, specifically total deflections, where he's again ahead of stoppers like Marcus Smart and Drew Holiday, while being right behind Defensive Player of the Year candidate Paul George. Harden had 72 more deflections than in 2017-18 and went from the 37th ranked player in that area to the 2nd. Defensive rating is a stat I prefer when judging defense, where James ranks a fairly solid 12th among guards in 2019. But Harden's gambles in the passing lanes have clearly paid off, at least last season they did. We'll see if he can repeat that in 2020. Number 6, Draymond Green's turnover percentage. The combo forward's elite reputation is instilled in every basketball fan's mind after his championship contributions on both ends. That shouldn't change after hearing that his turnover percentage is nearly 6% higher than any other NBA player, when the percentage difference from the second-ranked DeAndre Jordan to the 10th-ranked Trae Young is under 4. The excuse can be made that Draymond deals with confusing passes with shooters coming off screens, and that he drives to the basket a ton for his size. To be fair, Steve Kerr does put him in the role of point forward a lot. After a significantly higher turnover percentage than the pack, the case could be made for drastically less time for Green to handle the ball in the Warriors' offense going forward. Number 7, Kyle Lowry's loose balls recovered. 7 ahead of his former teammate and generationally great defender Kawhi in loose balls recovered in the postseason was the Bulldog 5-time All-Star and 1-time All-NBA player Kyle Lowry. Elite players and defenders own this stat category during both the playoffs and the regular season. 2019 spring, Lowry knew this was Toronto's window with Kawhi and left everything on the floor. You always want to be one player away from competing for a title, and after just signing Lowry for another year after this one, and with their explosive young phenom in Siakam, that's exactly what Toronto is precisely, one piece away. From 2012 when he was traded there, Lowry built up the Raptors' culture with shockingly great hustle that instantly made him a fan favorite in Toronto. That's exactly what Kyle proved at an elite level in the 2019 postseason. Number 8, Bradley Beal's miles traveled. 4 miles ahead of Buddy Hield, Brad led the NBA in total distance traveled. It's not completely surprising, being that Beal's constantly coming off screens and creating offense as the Wizards' primary scoring threat. What's shocking is that Beal, as well as leading the league in offensive miles traveled, he did the same thing defensively, becoming the first player to lead the league in distance traveled on offense and defense since Nick Batum in the 2014-15 season. So whether Beal's taking bad routes when getting open and making it difficult on himself, or chasing around shooters, he's in rare air regardless. By the way, the struggling Wizards are about to pay him $132 million over the next 4 years, and my question is, will the roster be good enough around him to compete? What do we expect from the Wizards this season without John Wall? They're most likely going to bottom out. Then let's say they have a miserable start to start 2020-21. Then that contract with Beal is impossible to trade, so I think it's a risky move. Number 9, HASSAN Whiteside's defensive rating. HASSAN recently called Portland, quote-unquote, the best team he's ever played on talent-wise. In 2016-17, he had a monster 17-14 year, and since his numbers have dipped offensively, it's easy to assume Whiteside's overall values tailed off the last 2 years. However, after 2017-18, where he missed nearly 30 games, last season he led the NBA in defensive rating, ahead of lengthy, reputable defenders like Giannis, Rudy Gobert, Andre Drummond, and Miles Turner, was Whiteside, and part of that is Heat's coach Spoelstra cutting his minutes to 23 and using him wisely, but in those 23 minutes, he was the most statistically valuable defender of any player last year. HASSAN's new team in Portland has limited depth at center though, so his minutes will most likely be increased, and we'll see if his elite statistical defense will sustain itself. Before the number 10 stat, the bonus stat that isn't quite shocking enough to contend is that among players who traveled at least 150 total miles, Buddy Hield had the fastest average speed in the NBA at 4.7 miles per hour, which is surprising because his teammate De'Aaron Fox is the one known for his speed, and Hield's known as a shooter. Sacramento just had the 5th highest pace in 2018-19, which allows Buddy to get out quickly for relentless transition buckets. Also, just like Bradley Beal, he's cutting around screens, and especially when catching and shooting off a pick, you have to get to your spot extremely fast. The big man's contact with the player you're defended by only really gives you a split second. It's up to the shooter to get to the spot, and Buddy gets to his open look after being screened for faster than anyone in basketball, so it's time to stop looking at Buddy as just a shooter and start considering him the fastest player in the NBA. And at number 10 is Kawhi's stats in the clutch. Fittingly, we end with the Finals MVP, who finished the 2019 playoffs with a staggering 16 more points in the clutch than any other player in the NBA. But the reason you should be shocked is because Kawhi's 58 points in the last 5 minutes of a game in which the point differential is 5 or less in the playoffs was 23 points ahead of any other player in the NBA Finals. And out of being one of 5 NBA players since 1984 to average 30 points in the Finals, or his historically great win share output, or becoming the 3rd man in league history to win Finals MVP on 2 teams, this clutch production from Kawhi tops all of those other numbers. Maybe not tops, but you get where I'm coming from. This proves Kawhi's the clutchest man in basketball today by far, but maybe his biggest test is ahead this season in a deep West. If you're new and enjoyed and want more hoops talk, subscribe. The shoutout question is, which stats shocked you the most and why? Go check out some of my other lists and stories. This was D-Flow. Thanks for watching, and see you next video.